segment will be actually be shown. You can actually replay it back later when when we send you the link. Okay. Well, here we are. I'm the host. Okay, as I mentioned earlier on, my name is Vivian. I'm actually a director of happiness. I've been in the industry for 30 years. And what I do is I've been doing a lot of sales and marketing. I help my clients to design effective solutions. And I'm actually an advocate. I really love lifelong study, and I believe in the largest trends, latest trends in technologies. So this shall know a little bit about who I am. Okay. And tonight our guest is Alwan. Maybe we would like to share. He's been around for 28 years. He's done a lot of meeting management, and I'm sure tonight he's going to share lots of pointers that we can you can pick up after the end of the workshop. Okay, so on this, and tonight, what we're going to learn is you can apply simple methodology of engaging your attendees using the right social media platform to market and to engage attendees, to implement mobile and responsive tools and engagement platforms, to use content and gamification to engage your attendees and evaluate your engagement success.
So Vivian, I will jump in here then. Thank you for introducing me and for doing this joint workshop. And it's fun being here this morning, a little early in our side of the part of the world, so to speak, compared to where you are. But thank everyone also for being here today. I hope you'll find the information we are going to share today very helpful as you go about creating your social media campaigns or your engagement campaigns really within your organizations. We're going to go over a lot from a high level, really giving you a roadmap to create and engage an engagement campaign for your conferences, your events, and your trade events, and so on. As I kick off today here, really, I want to share that in general, only about 15% of your possible participants attend your events. The remainder of your prospects, really, they remain at home. So only about 15% have an opportunity to build personal connections and drive positive business outcomes. 85% of the people that could become engaged with you and your events actually remain unengaged. So how would you feel if we can actually increase that to about 80% of your prospect attendees? What impact would that really have? So in today's webinar, we're going to cover at a high level the tools and concepts that do just that. How you go to engage all of your stakeholders at your event and even at home, really, as part of that. So engagement is such a big thing right now, and we found in the last couple of months, we've asked a lot of planners, what does that really mean to you? What do you understand engagement to be? And it's got quite interesting, the answers we get back from individuals. For some, it really was about polls during the events. Others were talking about social media and how much you share on Facebook, your WeChat, Twitter, and so on. For others, it was about sharing content. Others, yet again, about networking. Some thought it was about apps without really worrying about anything else, or and it kind of sort of about everything in between. Few really had a real definition of what engagement really means. It really seemed to be more defined by the app or the tool they were using rather than what it really should mean for their organization and their event. So when we look at engagement for us in the big scheme of things, it really means one thing: engagement equals community. So say it again, engagement equals community. But what does that really mean? A community is really defined as a group of people with similar interests, a group of people who support, rally around your cause, your brand, your product, your company, your opportunity. Engagement is really reaching out and welcoming your audience into your community and connecting that audience with other audience members, and therefore growing your community and your engagement levels. So that's really how we feel about that. Your engagement equals community. And then again, to put it in perspective, on what engagement really is, I kind of want to put it in in some perspective. So people seem to really be confused about engagement. But if you think about an event in general, when you plan an event, you do all of the same things you do when planning a dinner at your home. You invite people, you make sure they have enough food, you know, what food they want, what beverages they want. You tell people what to wear, where to park. You make sure you have enough seats at the table and so on. So what you're doing to invite people to your event is very similar, to your dinner at home, is very similar to what you will be doing for an event, just at a bigger scale. And the same, really counts for engagement. As soon as you start thinking about your dinner at home, you start asking your possible guests what a good date may be. If they have any eating preferences, you introduce your guests to each other. You encourage conversation. You may play games. You hope your guests will connect after your dinner. You may want to ask your guests how the dinner was. So naturally, that engagement comes very easy at a dinner party at home. But if you think about it in that concept, it's very similar as how you apply that to your events. So, think about those different concepts from planning a dinner party at your house and translating those simple things to a larger scale in your event. So again, engagement is community, events are community. And then if that's what it is, wouldn't you want your community to be the best possible ever? So, but let's look a little bit at a reality check here. So we talk with a lot of planners. And the thing that we always find very interesting is that planners always think about the app first. And it really shouldn't be about the app first. It really comes down to creating a strategy and then discovering the tools that will help you reach your engagement goals. It's really not about the app first. It should be almost last on the agenda before you figured out what your goals are and what you want to accomplish with your engagement. And then you look for the tools as you go about working on that. Another interesting thing, we've looked at about 300 different planners and an app. So to jump on the app here, on average, only about 60% of attendees download an event app. And of that number, approximately 15% use the app to the full extent. That means only 9% adoption rate. That's very low. So is it worth $5,000 to $10,000 to spend for your event on an app? So put that in your brain. Again, it's not about the app first, it's about strategy first. If you have a better strategy, that adoption rate will significantly increase. So let's start here on where to start with engagement. So a lot of planners really go, where do we start? Does the engagement start at the event? Does it start a few days or weeks prior? Or when you start thinking about the event at its inception, where do you really start to think about engagement? And it really starts at the time you start thinking about your event. As you start creating your event, its goals, concepts, and program, you should be out there engaging with previous and prospect attendees and helping you create the program and concept of the meeting. Engage your prospects attendees early, and they'll have an ownership stake at the event. You really can buy that loyalty. So asking your attendees, previous attendees or prospect attendees, what you want your event to be, who your speaker should be, what your program should look like, what topics they are interested in. If you had a bunch of different tools, from survey tools to social media, etc., to email marketing, you can start engaging them very early on by asking them their opinion, doing some polling. Once you start getting those answers back, you can build a better event. And you will also increase that loyalty of those prospect attendees, and they will start, joining your event. So that's where the first part should actually start. But before you start your engagement campaign, you really need to analyze and plan for a few key items in order to really create a successful campaign. So the first question to ask, and this is actually really standard planning questions in the big scheme of things, but what's your event? What's it all about? Is it a fundraising event, conference, a trade show, a golf tournament? Any type of event is obviously possible here. Each event is going to have a different goal. Each event is going to have different feel and messaging that will carry through your engagement campaign. What's also the goal of your event? Is it a fundraising event? You need to raise money for a cause. Is it launching a product? Are you selling items? Are you promoting a cause, a destination, etc.? So think about what that goal is, because that goal will also drive the messaging and content aggregation and distributions. And we'll come back to content a little bit later. And then also next is, who is your audience? It's really important that you understand your audience, especially as it comes to engagement. How does your audience communicate? How do they consume media on content? What tools do they use? What are the limitations of the tools they use? This really is going to drive implementation of the apps a little bit later on. Then who will do the job? You really cannot leave attendee engagement to volunteers with no experience. Engagement does need a strategy, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and an accountable individual or a group of individuals to plan, manage, and execute that engagement plan. In general, planners have already enough on their plate. When we see the things that planners have to do these days, it used to be only about the logistics. Now planners also have to be expert marketers and expert finance people and expert, so many other things. Should engagement really also fall under the planner's job description? And it's very helpful that planners know about it, that organizers know about it. But should that be more a marketing department function or product manager function or anything like that? So finding the right people to manage that is super important so you can do it well. You can do engagement. You should do it well right from the start. So then taking a little bit of a look of the life cycle of engagement. So we really feel that there's 4 stages to that. So one, you start at the inception, when you start thinking about the events, thinking about the process. This is where you start, like as I said a little bit earlier, start communicating with your past and your prospect attendees. You may want to use your old social media page you had for a previous event or your websites. Start engaging around your program, your content, and the creation of the event. Involve your prospect attendees and the past attendees in the creation, and they will feel that ownership and will join your event. Again, you can do this via social media tools, email campaigns, survey tools. Then pre-event, in the planning stages, when that's gone, you can start now engaging around content and discussions. Let them view content and create their personal itineraries. Let stakeholders or attendees connect with each other, schedule appointments, share on social media, involve sponsors, exhibitors, speakers, attendees. How do you start connecting all of these people together? So as you get registrations, people to sign up for your event, what happens is, usually people come to your event and they start meeting right at the registration desk. Pre-event, you can really start engaging people together at that stage where people can connect with each other online, start scheduling appointments, seeing what people are buying, selling, looking for. You can facilitate all of that as well pre-event. And sponsors and exhibitors love it that they have access to attendees. Attendees can schedule appointments with sponsors and exhibitors and also interact with speakers. As a speaker, it's really invaluable if attendees can reach out to you and saying, hey, I want to hear about this. I want to learn about that. So as a speaker, you can come in with a much more tailored presentation for the audience you're going to be speaking with. So think about that. Then during the event, a lot of other things you can do when it comes to engagement. And we'll delve into a little bit greater detail later on. But use second screen technology, which I'll explain a little bit later. Share content, media. You can text message, chat, social media, tweets, gamification, polls, track traffic, and so on. So a lot of things you can do, which we'll delve into a little bit later here during the event. And then post-event, you really keep on encouraging community building by releasing post-event content, polls, invite individuals who couldn't maybe make it to your event to join virtually afterwards with access to content and the community. Continue discussion and review, analyze and report. It's always key that at the end, you really look at how did it go, analyze it, report on it, figure out your return on investment on that engagement campaign. So really, before we move on here, let's look at a little bit about why people attend events, conferences, trade shows, and so on. I mean, really, there's 5 different things people, attend events for. It's, to learn, to network, to sell or buy, to raise money, or to have fun. So your engagement campaign should be driven by one of these goals as well. And mainly, what's really important with engagement is content. Content is king. Content drives engagement. So whatever you can do around content is very important. And we'll talk about that a little bit here. So what I want to do now is start looking at the tools. So there are a lot of tools available. What's important here is that you know your audience. There are hundreds of tools at your disposal to engage with in your audience. So it's really knowing your audience here. So let's take a look first at the top social media sites and messaging apps, and these are the top ones in the world. So you'll have Facebook, which most of us are familiar with, and it's the largest social media tool in the world, and can be used obviously to communicate with attendees, set up event pages, and so on. YouTube, obviously a video platform, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, WeChat, Google+, Tumblr, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Those are all very familiar and the top social media outlets in the world. It's really key to understand here which social media platform your audiences uses. Also implement a platform that makes sense. For professional events, LinkedIn happens to be one of the more effective tools because it's a professional environment. It's where people go to network, to do business, to get to know each other on a professional level, while some of the other ones are much more social driven or visual driven. And I want to tell you kind of a quick story here. A couple of months ago, I was in a meeting with an event with a group who was planning an event, and they had really worked on their engagement campaign, and they had worked very hard on putting a campaign together. And their goal was to use LinkedIn to communicate with their members and with people who were interested in the cause. They had spent a lot of work on that campaign. And as I'm in the meeting, I actually went to their LinkedIn pages. And this is a group that has about 800 or 900 members who can come to their event. What I noticed when I went to their LinkedIn environment, or their pages, their event page and their corporate page, they only had 8 followers. So they had not kept in, they hadn't really figured out that they also have to build, followers and have people engaged on that level as well. So they could have done this great campaign that looked good on paper, but it didn't really have an audience to promote the campaign to. So it's also looking, what are our followers? Where are we communicating with people? Do we have enough people following us as well? So think about that as well. Then you can look the next level at the survey apps. Everybody does polls, and it's important to get data at events. So you can look at survey apps to do surveys, pre, during, and post event. What do you want to learn? What speakers do you want to hear from? What does the program need to look like? And so on. Social media platforms sort of have limited poll capabilities, but then these tools offer more in-depth solutions for either for free or at a cost. The SurveyMonkey, PollDaddy, SurveyNet, Survey Planet. There are tens, if not hundreds, of survey apps out there that you can use for your events during pre and post events, and it will give you some really good data coming out of that. So, looking at the next level of tools, and I know there's a lot of information here, but you have email marketing apps, from fully integrated apps with an event platform, like our platform, Event Interface, that's to standalone email marketing apps like MailChimp and Constant Contact and Emma. Again, free options and paid options. What makes sense to you here? How does it integrate with other solutions such as Salesforce and other CRMs? So you still have to communicate. Email marketing is also part of that engagement strategy to drive people to polls, to drive people to your social media pages, and so on. Gamification apps. Gamification is such a big part right now of engagement. So sometimes it's sort of mentioned at the same level. What's engagement? What's this gamification? And it gets a little bit confused sometimes. But gamification is really something that's meant to engage your attendees in activities. And that could be something as simple as a scavenger hunt or doing something in the trade show floor, tours, and so on. And with the goal really to have attendees interact and connect with each other. Some apps are, Action Bound, Mapdash, Scavify, and others. They're really standalone apps that let you do games or gamification at events with the goal to have people network with each other. Next, you can look at custom or standalone event apps that can be used to share, program connected attendees, share profiles, access content. Apps such as Double Dutch just do that. Then you have fully integrated tools like Event Interface that do all of that, plus full event management from one platform rather than using a bunch of multiple tools together. Second screen technology is becoming really kind of popular right now, and what that really means is that when you're in a conference, you are looking at a speaker who is having stuff on the screen, who is communicating, who is doing their presentation, while you can sit at your tablet or your laptop or other device and follow along with the presentation, make notes, do other things. So you're watching screen on stage, screen in front of you with two different things of content on it, so you can really interact with presentations and making notes and following along and so on. So that's really, it's becoming more and more popular, and we do that as well with event interface. iBeacons, RFID, wearable tech, and intelligent flooring, those things really let you, one, track what your attendees are doing on site, but at the same time also let you push out content and engagement stuff when they go into different areas of your conference, tracking where they're going, tracking what sessions they are going into, pushing out content or gamification out to them. So those are also things that are used in the whole engagement concept at a conference. So excuse me. So taking taking a little bit of a step back here, is looking at what technology in general is needed to manage your event. So you're dealing with online registrations, that's a tool. You're dealing with content aggregation and distribution. In the past, we used to all collect our content and then print programs and hand out those programs. Now you can push that out through apps, through platforms, and have individuals interact with that content. Again, program creation, attendee itinerary creation. In the past, when you go to an event, you used to get your printed program. And now you can make programs available digitally to your attendees via an app. And then attendees can build their itinerary, see who else is in those programs, start communicating, start setting appointments, interacting with speakers. So you can do that as well. Polls, games, and networking. Again, those we've addressed this a little bit earlier, social media and communication. So those are all of the different tools or different things you need to accomplish as part of your event. And that seems really overwhelming sometimes from a planner perspective. It's like, do I really need 5 or 6 or 7 different tools to do this, or can I do it simpler? So our biggest rule is keep it simple. The more complicated, the more tools you bring in, the more risk you're taking to, one, make mistakes, not share all the data on the right platforms, have your attendees overwhelmed, and so on. So keep it very simple. And at the same time, you need to understand your attendees' mobile limitations. Not every attendee is allowed or can download apps on their mobile phones or their mobile devices. Depending on your industry, depending on where you're coming from, you may not just be able to do that. So more of a web-based tool or app may be much more beneficial for you than a mobile-based or than an app you actually need to download. So let's take a look now at an engagement plan, how you can put this together so to get step-by-step instructions of the things you need to plan on early and as you go about doing that here. So we'll have this for you easier in your event interface account as well, so you can start working on that. But the different things you have to start thinking about when it comes to engagement right at the beginning. And some of these things we've already talked about is, define your event goal. What's your event all about? What are you trying to accomplish? Understand your audience and what tools does your audience use. Don't really make any assumptions here. Just ask your audience, because I have seen, audience groups that you would assume may not be using smartphones and apps and so on, actually be groups that have a much higher implementation rate than other groups. So think about, really ask your audience what tools that they use. From the beginning, develop your engagement goals, your plan. What are you really trying to do with your engagement? Is it, getting people to talk to each other? Is it increasing your attendee numbers? Is it doing sales? Is it connecting people? Is it scheduling appointments? Is it getting feedback? Whatever those different goals may be for your engagement, define those in the beginning, because they will help you, one, define your return on investment at the end of the campaign, but it would also help you as you go about doing the engagement part of it. Early on, also define, once you sort of figured all that out, define the tools you want to use for your campaigns, pre, during, and post event. Define your story, and this is really goes around content. Is what's your event all about? What is the content that is going to be meaningful to your attendees. And I can't tell you what that is. You will know that for your events. What kind of content should you engage your people around? Is it a specific launch of a product? Is it a specific speaker, specific cause, whatever that may be, and define your story around that. It's always helpful to have an engagement timeline as you develop that. It's kind of like a content calendar for marketing, but what goes out at what time is important, so you can think about that. And I'll provide you with an actual content calendar after the session in the event interface accounts and the discussion section, so you have access to that. You can assign campaign management early on, assign the right person to the right platform. As it comes to social media, it's very easy to say, we'll have this volunteer do this because they have a website or they have a Facebook page. That's probably not the right answer or the right solution. You really have to define the right person in your organization to do that particular job, who has experience, who understands what you're trying to accomplish, who can be held accountable. Hashtags, it's something that's important to use on Twitter and other social media outlets. Start defining what those may mean for your event and promote those. Encourage your attendees to use those as they're using social media as well. Create excellent content. Create your event pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other appropriate social platforms. But keep it, again, simple so people don't have to go look for different places. It's either one place or Facebook or LinkedIn and then Twitter or so on. So keep it simple, but define those pages there and then start connecting with your audience. As you start going a little bit further, you need to start scheduling your engagement with your social media posts. And there's a lot of different papers written about how many posts should you have per day, per week, when should you post, etc. And to be blunt, I wish I had the perfect answer for you, because I've looked at, I don't know, I would say hundreds of papers maybe, and almost everyone has a different idea and what they want to do. But I think what's important from the beginning is that you set a sort of a precedent for your audience. If you know your audience is really active on social media around lunchtime, then start posting stuff around lunchtime. If you can do it once a day, do it once a day and make it meaningful. If it's once a week and it's every Thursday once a week, do it that way. If you can do it 7 times a day, you can do it 7 times a day. But it's really putting meaningful content out there that people can engage with, answer questions, participate in polls, can also share it with their audiences and so on. The good thing here is that you can use a lot of different tools where you don't have to go online and schedule it yourself. Facebook lets you schedule posts. TweetDeck and some other solutions let you schedule tweets. So you can really sit somewhere on a Sunday afternoon, schedule all your Facebook posts and your tweets out for the week, and then have them go at the times you schedule them without having to sit there X amount of times. But again, it's important to post at the right time for your audience and your outlet. The key here is that you follow what's coming back, that you monitor your social media constantly, because you may have to respond to things being posted by your prospect attendees and the audience at large, so to speak. Start announcing your sign-up dates and your prices. Start doing blog posts. Start engaging your audience with guest speakers and sponsors. Start encouraging that. So having an app or a tool available, or even a social media platform available where your audience can interact with guests before the event. Encourage pretty much all event stakeholders to communicate with each other. When you go to your sponsors and you're trying to sell an expensive sponsorship packet, if you can give them the tools to connect with your attendees pre-event, that brings the value of that sponsorship package up. So give them that. Create your event program, include the content, and have people start building their itineraries as well as part of that, and interact with that as well. At the event, live post pictures, quotes, retweets. Ask your audience to participate via hashtag. Monitor social media always. Session engagement, polls, gamification, content sharing. All important at the event itself. You can use engagement to drive traffic to exhibitors, connect attendees with each other based on interest. You can live blog, track traffic, and really document the event. So there's a lot of different moving pieces to that, just to figure out what you can actually realistically do at your event. And some larger events, they actually have dedicated staff who does this at the event, monitors and produces all of that information. So, and then post-event, and this is really not important, not to skimp on this one, start surveying your attendees. And you can survey, after each session as well, during the event. But after the event, you can do surveys of partners and collaborators, compile your results and share your story, share the successes of your event, post pictures and feedback on social media. If you can create, a presentation, a slideshow, or a video of your event, and ask people to share and comment and do all of that, highlight the successes. So your event was really successful. If you can, what we've seen very successful here is start scheduling follow-up virtual events to keep your audience engaged. So if you had a really great speaker, have that speaker come back virtually, a couple of months later to answer follow-up questions. That could be via chat, that could be via a virtual meeting, etc. Just keep your audience engaged, because the more you can keep them engaged during and after the event, the more they will want to come back next year. Merge the event campaign to next year's campaign. Compile your findings. Figure out what went really well, what people engaged with really well, and figure out what you can bring to next year's event versus need to kind of really look at again, because not everything is going to work. But you look at that and then really say thank you to everybody who has helped you with that. So a lot of different parts that you'll have to look at post-event. And this is at a high level in essence, but it's all really important parts to look at. So what you're going to have to look at is, what does success in a social, in an engagement campaign look like for you? Does that really mean how many attendees participated, pre-event? How many interactions were you able to generate? How many people reposted, retweeted, etc. And there's tools you can use that I'll show you later on to do all of that with. How did your attendees interact with programs, speakers, content, and everything else at your event? Were connections made? Were appointments scheduled? Is there a way for you to figure out what the deal flow was that was created at an event? So certain tools will let you say there were so many business deals created, there were so many meetings created, etc. So many visits scheduled at the event. That has a monetary value that you can track. How did your attendees interact? How long did they stay at booths? How did they play games? How many completed surveys? So understand really what's important to you here, so you can understand how successful your engagement campaign was, and you can calculate your return on investment on that. So think about that as you build your campaign, and then also afterwards, so you can have a really good overall view of what the engagement was for you and how successful or not successful it was. So different things to think about. So with the different tools out there and with putting a campaign together, you can really see your overall attendee engagement grow from 50 to 80% by including on-site at-home attendees. With really in the long run, the result being that you're going to have larger attendee numbers at your event. You can do that with Event Interface and other tools out there. So kind of looking at your top tips here. The first thing that's really important is to know your audience. Building a community requires a use of multiple tools and know your audience and the social tools that they use, and then make those tools a component of your overall strategy. You need to ensure that your event technology works with these tools, or use one tool that does it all, like Event Interface. Two, you really have to commit to the community. You really have to commit to engagement. Community doesn't just happen. You need to have a desire to build community, to engage. And that really comes from not just the organizer or the planner, that really comes from the company leadership, and should tie to your aspiration to being the best event possible in that particular community. Communities, have measurable goals, and there must be really a designated champion to lead that to success. Like as I said earlier, maybe that's not the planner, but a marketing person, maybe a better person here to help and oversee that. Content is always king. People participate in your events to learn, to network, and be part of, a group of people with access to content. You know, build a content library for your event, featuring, articles and posts by respected peers, by speakers and sponsors. Open it up to all of your stakeholders, and include, your speakers, your sponsors, and your exhibitors, because it's always kind of interesting when I see planners struggle to find content, but they have speakers who are willing to come speak at the event. If you ask them to provide you with some content to promote the conference, they'll all gladly do it. The same with sponsors, the same with exhibitors. So starting aggregating content that's meaningful, that you can push out and engage your attendees with. Another topic that's really important is invest. If you want to do engagements really well, you have to invest time, talent, and resources. It doesn't start, it doesn't just start, it doesn't just happen. It really starts right from the beginning. As you start thinking about your event, you have to make an effort going out there and listening to your attendees, and continually for the period of planning, be out there engaging with people, asking questions, pushing out content, getting them engaged with you. So it takes time and energy, and sometimes a little bit of money to be able to do that. So community, as I said, engage, it just doesn't really happen. You have to actually do it. So it's almost in essence where you, in the beginning, the first time you really delve into it, where you really have to start training your audience, training your attendees to become engaged. So you have to sort of get them into a new habit versus, hoping it will happen. So you have to do some training there. And at the end, you need to analyze and use data. Now that you've created, and continue to manage that community, you're going to have to learn to analyze the data shared and the comments you received, by the attendees, your speakers, your sponsors. The business intelligence that's come back is really invaluable to your event, to your organization, to your conference, etc. You really no longer have to sort of wait to connect with people at your event. You can now view data real time, pre, during, and post event. In the old days, people would show up and they would leave, and they would have a piece of paper that had a survey on it. Now you can start using this right at the beginning to after the event and continually after, where especially that data is so invaluable in making your events really fantastic. So looking at a couple of the tools that are available, obviously Event Interface, we're a full-featured tool that does a lot of the things we talked about today. When it comes to social media sites, I've put a link here for you to look at, because even though we address the top 10 sort of social media sites that are out there in the world, some organizations or some causes have really their own social media sites that are so much more valuable than a potential Facebook or Twitter and so on. So they're specialized social networks. There are over 300 of them. So you look at this link and maybe you'll find something in there. Maybe you'll find a social media outlet in there that's really fantastic for your audience that you can start using. When it comes to email marketing, MailChimp, it's a very robust email distribution program that's free for up to 2,000 email addresses. SurveyMonkey is an online survey tool that you can use. And again, free up to 10 questions, I believe. And then hashtracking.com is something that lets you measure the buzz on Twitter. So you can start looking at some of those tools as well to track your engagement. Now, I want to throw it back to Vivian to see if there are any follow-up questions and so on as part of this. I've been talking for about 45 minutes here, so I wanted to make sure we leave some time for questions.
Thank you for sharing so much with all of us. Right now, we're going to throw questions. If you do have any questions for us to give you answers, could you just type it up on the chat group so that we can have a look at it?
No questions? Is everyone still awake on our side of the country?
Well, I see this. Everyone is well equipped. Oh, yes, we do have a question here.
Hi, Jill. Will we can reach out? We can reach out afterwards if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Thank you. I will do that.
Okay.
And the question from Lucky Group: would you share
Yes.
more
Share
about?
more.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Vivian. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. Well, Lucky Group has a question for us, which she likes to know more about how people can use gamification.
Sure. So gamification is really, in essence, a tool to, I mean, it says play games, so to speak. So the way I've seen it mostly used, actually a couple of different ways. So one is you're using a tool to do things like scavenger hunts and to connect people, on site with exhibitor sponsors. You do sort of that games, go find this, get this. In the old days, referring to the old days, we had this. You got this little passport, quote unquote, at your event where you had to go to the different, experience sponsors and stamp your passport, and then at the end of it, you could, win a prize, whatever. So right now we are using almost that same concept to drive traffic to different booths and stuff like that, or to different parts of a conference or an event. But it also comes down to how do you, during these games, quote unquote, how do you let people connect with each other? So you send off a group of 6 people to go do an activity. Those 6 people may not normally connect with each other during a standard event. You may take your little passport and just go from booth to booth and do your thing. Here we're putting people together and we're letting them travel and do, play a game, so to speak, and they connect with each other and obviously make connections and, hopefully do business and so on. But at the same time, you meet some other goals around there. So that's one of the things we see it used a lot. There's also, when you're at events and with speakers and sessions, or even virtual events where you can implement, online gamification, where so look, when you go to the movie theater, you have especially here, we see this, the question, and then the three options, and there's one right option to start implementing that sort of stuff on screens and conferences, but also virtually, puzzles and so on. So it's really a tool. I think the word gamification is kind of a broad word. I've seen people use. There's this. I can't think of the name right now, but there's this microphone right now that you can use. It's kind of this foam box, and rather than passing a microphone in the room, people just throw this box at each other in the room, and they just catch it, and they use it as a microphone to ask a question. So that's sort of game, it's part of the session, but sort of kind of a fun game to throw the microphone around. So it's done on so many different levels. But for me, the most important part of gamification is finding a way to connect attendees with each other, to visit sponsors, exhibitors, or discover a destination or something like that. So that's how I see it. Vivian, is there anything on your side, the world, that's maybe different?
Well, yes, we do. We had this campaign in Singapore. It's actually to encourage us to stay healthy. And what we had was a gamification platform where we are supposed to walk 10,000 steps to get to a point system. And what happened is, once you reach the point system, you get a reward. So it has been very successful because people are actually just very motivated by getting more scores to get their points. It's not the money, because the voucher is very low. You just can't buy much things from it, but it's actually the motivation that comes before it. So gamification itself also can be used as an encouragement platform to encourage your objective in your particular event. So you could use that. I've also we also did use gamification for a technology forum before. And what we did was we had a similar to what a treasure hunt, And what the attendees had to do is they had to go around to the individual booth to gather answers before they basically get a chop. And once they finished all the six booths, then we will give them a little prize as a incentive for doing it. The feedback that we received was very good because it was something that they were able to engage. Um, and for the client, it was for the first time that they got all their attendees to actually listen to their demonstrations at the booth, because in the past the people just walk past, they don't really listen. So the next year they use it for sponsors, and it has been also where the sponsors got more engagement with the attendees. So this is actually how gamification can be used in various platforms, various attendees from conference to live campaigns.
Thank you, Vivian.
Okay.
Were there any other questions?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. So, is there any question for us? Okay. Well, if there is no questions, I'd like to thank Al for sharing so much with us. We're going to have a next webinar, which is going to be held on the 8th of February. It will be at 6 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Singapore time. And we hope that all of you can join us. And for tonight's video of the workshop, the PowerPoint will be available in your event interface account for later viewing. So as you know, it's going to be recorded, the video. So we'd like to thank all of you for sharing your precious time with us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Make it a great day.
Yes. Bye. Okay.